Happy 2024. I put off making this video for a while. Like we are in the very dying embers of 2023 right now. I didn't feel very positive about the books that I read this year. But then when I checked to come up with a compilation for this video, I realized that, wait a minute, I've read more than a handful of good books this year. Like, where is this bad mood coming from? I think what it is that I'm getting really quite altogether sick of studying English literature at university. There are some good points at the current moment. It feels that there are more negative things than positive things. And I'm thinking about making a video, is it worth studying English literature at university? If you would like to see that video, please let me know. Because on one hand, I want to make it. On the other hand, I feel that I will be quite in trouble with, well, the whole English literature faculty at the university where I'm currently studying. But I would get myself in trouble with a bunch of middle-aged people who have very high opinions of Jane Austen. My. My favorite books of 2023. Emile Zola, The Masterpiece, a young artist who is grappling with his artistic style and the fact that even though he feels that his paintings are genius, some of his friends agree with him. The Paris public do not like his paintings and they think that they are ugly, but he doesn't care. You know, those are just a bunch of people who don't understand what he's trying to do. And he spends his whole life trying to produce that one great masterpiece. It is the story of his young to adult life. I'll read you this little bit because in one of the opening chapters, it talks about how he's a young man and he's come out of the Artist Academy and he has his artistic friends. What they do when they get together is they just go marching all around Paris, arguing and discussing and deliberating about the artistic ideas that they all have. Go on this huge tour of, you know, Paris, just walking and walking. I love that because I wonder if young people still do that. I remember that when I got to Budapest, I was 27 years old, and there was this one friend I had. I wanted to be a writer. That's why I went to Europe. He wanted to be a writer. That's why he went to Europe. We would do that. We would walk around Budapest and we would talk about short stories that we liked and appreciated and writers that we liked. And we would talk about why are certain books elevated and why at university do they teach such boring old stuff? Like, why don't the university professors take more chances with literature? We would make this enormous tour of Budapest. And I know that when I left Hungary, like, I knew Budapest better than most Hungarians. So this passage really reminded me of that. Claude was quivering with delight. "Ah, this Paris," he cried. "It's ours, all ours for the taking." Each one of them was thrilled almost beyond words as they looked on the scene with eyes that shone with desire. Did they not feel glory being wafted over the whole vast city from the top of that avenue? Paris was here, and they meant it to be theirs. "And we'll take it," asserted Sandoz with his look of stubborn determination. "Of course we will," added Jory. So they turned up the Rue d'Amsterdam. They had just walked right across Paris, one of their favorite jaunts, although they had other favorites too, all along the riverside, for example, or over the part of the fortifications from the Porte Saint-Jacques, say to Les Maulneux, or perhaps out to Père Lachaise, and back round the other outer boulevards. For a whole day at a time, they would roam the streets and squares, as long as their legs would carry them, as if they wanted to conquer one district after another by flinging their startling theories into the face of the houses. The pavements they tramped were their battlefield, and the very soil of which produced an ecstasy which drugged their fatigue. That really spoke to me. Like, that is exactly how I felt. I had escaped from Canada. I'd got to Europe, just roaming around Budapest, which is a gorgeous city. That's how I felt, that it would be nothing to write a novel that was going to break the world in half, as long as I could just keep living in Budapest. I wonder if the young people still do that, escape their countries, go off to foreign lands to soak the culture into their sinews. I hope you do, young people, because it is the greatest life even if you end up poor like me, it is just a divine way to spend your younger years. The next book, as we climb our way to the top of the ladder from 2023 literature, according to me, The Blue Room by George Simenon. I didn't read too many short books this year, so I was very pleased to read 156 pages, brief, direct, but very, very deep psychological. This novel is so fantastic. Such a simple premise. There's a man and a woman, and they meet in the Blue Room for their monthly rendezvous. They are both married to other people. He has a wife, she has a husband, and she has a signal for this man. She puts a towel out on the windowsill of her window, which, when he sees that, he knows that she wants to meet in the Blue Room on Wednesday. And they go there for some afternoon exercise. Let's put it that way. And on page, I think it's page 3, we realize that the man is being questioned by the police about his activities in the Blue Room. Suddenly, the clouds are there in the sky. Well, how does he end up being in police custody? Well, we know something has happened. And we also know that he takes this love affair very lightly. As far as he's concerned, they meet once a month and they get at it. That's as far as it goes, as far as he's concerned. However, what he does not realize is that his lover is taking the relationship much more seriously than he is. Oh boy. Well, that is the thing, is that throughout the 156 pages, we don't know how it comes to be that he is in jail. But we suspect we know. It must be something to do with this situation, right? It is a wonderful, fantastic book. So good. I'm going to read a lot more George Simenon in the future, and I really recommend you do too. It's so nice to read something so sharp and insightful into the minds of the characters. Really fantastic. Oh, by the way, because these are all my favorite books of 2023, I've already made reviews out of all of them. Like, if you want to see the long, full, extended review that I made of all of these books, the link is up there. Primo Levi, The Periodic Table. It's funny because I'd forgotten about this one. When I checked my book list for 2023 and I saw The Periodic Table that I read last January, and I remembered the book and I thought about the book because The Periodic Table is a collection of short stories, all with the title of one of the periodic elements. Primo Levi, mostly semi-autobiographical, recounting stories from his life, with a couple of pure fiction short stories thrown in for good measure. I'm sure there's a periodic elemental joke within there somewhere. If you've never heard of Primo Levi, he was one of the very, very few survivors of Auschwitz. He survived because he had a chemistry degree, which he got in Italy. Even that is a small miracle in itself, because he was Jewish, and Jewish people were not allowed to attend university, but somehow he got in and he graduated with high honors, so that when he was deported to Auschwitz, when they were sending people to that side or to that side, and he could say that he had a chemistry degree, it saved his life. You know, that he went to work in the Auschwitz laboratory. That allowed him to stay alive much longer than an ordinary prisoner could. Being an Auschwitz survivor, it just puts such a massive exclamation point beside someone's name. And this is one of the great books, because not only does it show you a first-hand account of the experience of the camps, it's written in a fantastic literary style. Like, if you were to survive Auschwitz, like, somehow in my mind, that kind of gives you a free pass for the rest of your life. You never have to pay when you get on the bus. If you go into a grocery store, you know, you just, yep, okay, yep, it's okay. No, you don't have to, go ahead. But that's not true. If you were to survive and you could live some kind of a functioning life afterwards, you had to. You had to continue to live. You had to get a job, you had to pay for the rent, you had to think about maybe getting married and starting a family and buying a home. And that's what a lot of the periodic table is that Primo Levi came back from Auschwitz and he worked as a chemist, his university training. And some of the stories based on that are fantastic. There's a story in the book called Arsenic. It's a very, very simple story. It's one of the shorter ones, and just somehow something about that arsenic story really I love that one. Very simply, a man comes into Primo Levi's private chemistry shop and he has some sugar and he asks him, Primo Levi, could you test this for arsenic? Which he does, and he does discover, yeah, it's laced with arsenic. And then we find out the reason why and what will happen because of that. It's really not the premier story of the collection, but something about that one really made me happy. And there's another story called Nitrogen. Primo Levi has to go and he has to synthesize some kind of, I think, uric acid. One place where he can synthesize this uric acid is from chicken shit. And so he goes to some of the local farms and he asks if he goes to the farmer and says, can I collect your chicken shit? And the farmer kind of goes, well, if you want. And so he spends the day collecting all the chicken shit and he doesn't get very much of it and he gets filthy in the process of it. As a result, doesn't get much uric acid out of it, what he collects. So he goes back to his books and he discovers that there is an extraordinarily high concentration of this uric acid or nitrogen or whatever it is in the feces of a boa constrictor. So he drives to the local zoo and he speaks with the zookeeper and he asks if he can collect some of the python feces because he's a chemist and the zookeeper speaks to him so angrily, derisively. He says, a boa constrictor only shits once every 2 weeks. And when it does, it is spoken for and paid for long in advance by some very prestigious companies who want to get their hands on it because of the mineral content. So don't you come in here and say, oh, you walk in and say, oh, can I have some of your boa constrictor python shit? And he treats him like such a peasant. Again, I mean, it's not the grandest story in the collection, but it made me smile because it was like, imagine that. Like imagine you want some snake shit and all of a sudden you discover that it's some really like rare artifact that people are dying to get their hands on, worlds within worlds. Periodic table, Primo Levi, wonderful. I think when you read it, the amazing thing is that you can sense that in spite of all he went through, the tribulations, he somehow managed to keep a sense of humor because the stories are great and you could sense his irony. It's so well written. Imagine that. All right, where are we? How many have we had? We've had 3, and we've got 3 left. Natsume Soseki. The Gate. A husband and a wife. They live on the outskirts of Tokyo. They are very poor, but they live in a beautiful kind of harmony together. The husband should be more assertive. He should be more assertive dealing with his aunt who is keeping some money from him. We don't know why, but he's not cowardly, but he's not very self-possessed. Upon reflection, something that is a little bit beneath the surface, their marriage has a bit of a dark cloud hovering above it, which is not spoken of directly in the novel. His family are not happy with his marriage. If we are clever and we are reading well, we understand why that is. Not 100% why, but 50%. The inklings as to why are quite evident. As I say, they live in harmony until his brash younger brother comes to live with them, which puts more strain on their already quite impecunious financial situation. His wife doesn't like that the younger brothers come to live there, but this is all a Japanese story, so she has to be respectful, she has to be kind, she has to be submissive. But the husband is the ruler of the roost. However, he's not someone who will ever say, stop that, I don't like it. He will try to, in the most beating about the bush manner he has. Why is it such a beautiful book? It's just the writing. The writing is so authentic, so simple. The writing just cuts through everything. All you need are those few words on the page which tell you how they feel. Very simple things. Like there's a point in, I think, chapter 2 where he's traveling from his office to his home and he's reflecting on the the fact that he lives in Tokyo, but he just doesn't, he's never really felt that he's experienced Tokyo, and that it's a shame that he hasn't, because, you know, it's such a amazing cosmopolitan city, and that he makes this commute every day without really being aware of all of the life bustling all around him. And of course, the author Soseki, he did it a lot more succinctly than I just did there, because, see, you know, when I did that, that was long-winded and rambling, and it's, you know, I've got to turn 7 corners to get to the point that I'm trying to make. And the reason this novel is so fantastic is because he cuts through it all, and he gets right to that emotion and that experience, which is what, like, I value the most in literature, when you just, there it is. There is the experience with the fewest possible words, but it affects you, and it affects everyone. Anyone who reads that, who has a human soul and sensibility, will respond to that writing. Whew. God, I've only had 1 beer. The runner-up to the best book of 2023 is The Custom of the Country by Edith Wharton. So what I didn't talk about in my review of The Custom of the Country was that, I don't know why, but it is so much fun to read about a really horrible character. Like, I don't know why I should enjoy so much reading about a character who I actively hated. And I'm going to say something which people will find offensive, but I would like to say that I am repeating what the university professor said to our class of English literature students. These are the words out of his mouth. Undine Spragg, that loathsome character, is an absolute bitch. But it's true. She's an absolute world-ending bitch. That's the beginning of the novel. Daddy, I need more money. Daddy, I need more money. I need a box at the opera. Oh, Undine, I can't do it. Daddy, I need it. Oh, okay. She gets married. Ralph, I need more money. Ralph, I need more money. Daddy, I also need more money. Ralph, I need more money. And then when she realizes that her husband can't give her any more money, she looks around for a new husband who has more to offer. And she spends the novel that way. It is just appalling. At one point, she gets pregnant with Ralph's baby, and she goes to him, and she's very, very upset. She tells him, like, this situation with this baby is going to take 1 year out of my social life. I won't be able to go out. My dresses won't fit me. I won't be able to dance. I won't be able to have a good time. Like this is ruining 1 year of my life. Because, you know, as soon as it's delivered, then she's done with it pretty much. She is just like one of the characters in literature that you are going to hate. You're going to hate her. Man, I hope this novel ends with some weird hot air balloon tragedy, and she's right in the midst of it. I really do not know why it is so much fun to read about such a horrible character. Is that the only reason I love this novel? No, I don't think it's the only reason, but it's the only one I can think of right now. Finally, I don't think this will be a surprise to anyone who's been watching the channel. Junichiro Tanizaki, The Makioka Sisters, is my absolute favorite novel of the year. All of the other novels, they could be in any order, depending on my mood. The Masterpiece, I could have that as number 2. I could have that as number 5. The Gate, the same thing. The Periodic Table, well, the Periodic Table's close to the top, but without doubt, this is my favorite novel of the year. And again, in that weird Japanese style, very little happens, real life as we all live it, but the writing is so vibrant and clear and precise. I would read this book if it were endless. Like, if it were just a book that regenerated itself, I would keep reading it, because it is, something about it is so compelling. Make it a goal to read this, because Yukiko needs a husband, but she's too shy. Her family are really trying to help her get a husband by arranging it with the local matchmaker, but she's getting a bit old and her possibilities are growing slimmer. I think it's very hard for me to sell you Japanese literature, because on one hand I'm saying that so little happens. Believe me on the other side, where I'm telling you that the writing, the characters, the psychological study of this is just the greatest thing. 2 honorable mentions. Vertigo. I really enjoyed reading Vertigo, and I thought the movie was kind of weird. I accept the weirdness of Vertigo because it was a weird time in America, in San Francisco, in Alfred Hitchcock's life. It was a weird time, but I liked Vertigo the novel. I thought it was great. And even though I'm really getting very annoyed and pessimistic with my university English literature education, I will say that in the past semester I took one great class, and that was Christopher Marlowe versus William Shakespeare, about how Christopher Marlowe came before Shakespeare, and he was much more popular, much more well-regarded, and Shakespeare came after. And in this course we saw how Marlowe wrote these plays, and Shakespeare, to put it simply, used some of Marlowe's premises as the basis for some of his plays. In the semester we looked at Marlowe's The Jew of Malta and Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice. The Jew of Malta is a great play. It's just that I think you really need to work hard to ignore the anti-Semitism. In spite of it, it's still a great play. It's just that a bit hard to read for our delicate sensibilities today. The Merchant of Venice, even though I'm not too keen on that play, comparing the two plays, I thought was fantastic. And Shylock, the Jew of The Merchant of Venice, compared to Barabbas, the Jew of Malta, Shakespeare really put a much more humane portrait of a Jewish character into his play. Barabbas is kind of a tyrant and becomes quite bloodthirsty. Shylock is the victim of these non-Jewish Gentile attitudes and persecution, and he really suffers. Well, in the past it used to be played for comedy quite a lot, but I think nowadays people play The Merchant of Venice a lot more sympathetically to the Shylock character, which you should do. There's a scene where Shylock's daughter has run away with her, she's eloped with her boyfriend, and she's stolen a ring of Shylock's, a turquoise ring. Shylock is really like overcome with grief at the loss of this ring, and I think in the past a lot of people read that as, oh, well, you see how grasping the Jew is, he doesn't care about his daughter, he cares about losing this ring. But we learn later in the play that the reason he's so upset about the loss of the turquoise ring is because that was a gift from his deceased wife. That's why he's so sad at the loss of his ring. It's not about the fact that, he's worried about the financial or the monetary value of it. He's sad because it's a keepsake from his deceased wife. And then later he discovers that his daughter, who ran off, traded the ring for a monkey. And again, like, it could be played for humor in the past, where he talks about, the value of that ring. I could have bought like a whole Africa full of monkeys for that ring. Again, he's lamenting, and you could say, oh, look, the Jews always with their hand on their wallet. But it's not about that. It's about the fact that, like, the last reminder of his dead wife. And that is very, very significant when you read the play. Like, that is not to be ignored by any means. So those are the two honorable mentions. There we go. There won't be a book magazine lottery this week, but I'll do something because I think it's nice to start the new year with a bit of generosity and a bit of gift giving and a bit of open-handedness. The first 3 people who write to me at my email address, grantlovesbooks@gmail.com, the first 3 people who write to me and say, Grant, please send me one of your magazines. My magazine with my short stories, 3 short stories and 1 poem, The Friend from Budapest. And you include your postal address, I'll send you this for free, gratis. Just to say, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you to watch to the end of the video. It's quite rare, actually. I think only about a quarter of the people make it to the very end. I'm so long-winded, I don't blame them. So if you made it this far and you would like to get a copy of this, please write to me. I'll put a link below. I'll send you one of these. If you would like to buy one, it's $20. But if you write to me very quickly, I'll just send you one out of the goodness of my goddamn cold, stony heart. Next week, I will be releasing my 2024 to be read list. It's already been on Patreon for over a month. All of the people who support me on Patreon have had access to it for like 2 months, I think. I put it on Patreon in November. If you want to get early access to what I'm thinking about and what I'm planning and just the daily trials and tribulations and the minutiae of my life, I write a weekly blog update talking about what's happening, how I feel about university, the professors, and even about my feelings towards the other students. I don't know what it is with the young generation, but young people love cracking their knuckles. Like it fills me with revulsion. Young people today are the knuckle cracking generation. It is revolting. Support me on Patreon. I'd really, really appreciate it, just because it's nice to build a community, isn't it? Like all of my Patreons, I feel I have a really good connection with. I'm not very diligent about answering all of their emails. I'm sorry to my patrons. They know that quite well. But I do read them, and I do imagine that I will respond to them in goodly time. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. My name is Grant. This is Grant Loves Books. Have a wonderful 2024. Take care. Did that come out all right? I guess it did. The video's long enough.